and Facebook's access to and use of information on individuals or groups of individuals in credit, insurance, employment, or housing. I appreciate Facebook's response last week. Shortly after the letter was sent, Facebook formally announced its intention to launch the payment system, Libra, and issued a white paper providing some information about the project. Since then, U.S. and global regulators have taken notice, including the Federal Reserve, UK's Financial Conduct Authority, Financial Stability Board, G7, and others. Last week, during the Federal Reserve's semi-annual monetary policy report to Congress, Chairman Powell raised concerns about the cryptocurrency's potential for inciting money laundering and financial instability problems, and also expressed concern over customers' privacy. Yesterday, Secretary Mnuchin stated the Treasury Department has very serious concerns that Libra could be misused by money launderers and terrorist financiers. The Bank of England Governor, Mark Carney, said Libra, if it achieves its ambitions, would be systemically important. As such, it would have to meet the highest standards of prudential regulation and consumer protection. It must address issues ranging from anti-money laundering to data protection to operational resilience. Concerns include, but are in no way limited, to how the payment system will work, how it will be managed, and how Libra, the Libra Association, Calibra, and Facebook will all interact. What consumer protections will apply, and potential implications for consumers with respect to financial loss from fraud or the project's failure. How individuals' data will be protected, and how individuals' privacy will be preserved. How the Libra ecosystem interacts with the Bank Secrecy Act and other existing anti-money laundering regulations. And ways that Libra could threaten financial stability and the steps that could be taken preemptively to mitigate those risks. Despite the uncertainties, Facebook's stated goals for the payment system are commendable. According to the World Bank, 1.7 billion adults remain unbanked, but 2/3 of them own a mobile phone or otherwise have access to the internet. If done right, Facebook's efforts to leverage existing and evolving technology and make innovative improvements to traditional and non-traditional payment systems could deliver material benefits, such as expanding access to the financial system for the underbanked and providing cheaper and faster payments. Still, Libra is based on a relatively new and continually evolving technology in which it is not entirely clear how existing laws and regulations apply. I'm particularly interested in its implications for the protection and privacy of individuals' data. Facebook has massive reach and influence within society with over 2 billion active monthly users and access to vast amounts of personal information, including that which is received directly from users and information that can be derived from their behavior, both on and off of Facebook. Libra and Calibra will only expand this reach by increasing commerce on Facebook Inc. platforms. This raises several questions. The Banking Committee has held hearings on data privacy, including as it pertains to the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, data brokers, and the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Given the significant amount of user information already held by the largest social media platforms, and the prospect of gaining even more financial information, Congress needs to give individuals real control over their data. Europe has already done this by imposing obligations on companies and establishing rights for individuals with respect to their data. We need to establish similar obligations for data collectors, brokers, and users, and implement an enforcement system to ensure the collection process is not abused and that data is adequately protected. Individuals are the rightful owners of their data. They should be granted a certain set of privacy rights and the ability to protect those rights through informed consent, including full disclosure of the data that is being gathered and how it is being used. Regulations should be clear and understandable for both collectors and consumers and should not punish those who opt out of collection practices. Individuals should also have the ability to review their data, correct inaccuracies, and have ample opportunity to opt out of it being shared or sold for marketing and other purposes. Chairman Powell also said last week that the privacy rules that we apply to banks, we have no authority to apply to Facebook or to Libra. He added that we may even need to create a new regulator to address such issues. As we determine the next steps, what is clear is the importance that financial innovation happen here in America. In this way, the Libra announcement has heightened the need for policymakers and regulators to establish clear rules of the road. During this hearing, I look forward to hearing more about Facebook's project, the steps it plans to take and has taken with regulators to ensure compliance with all laws and regulations, and how it intends to ensure individuals' privacy is maintained and information is protected. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Facebook is dangerous. Now, Facebook might not intend to be dangerous, but surely they don't respect the power of the technologies they are playing with, like a toddler who has gotten his hands on a book of matches. Facebook has burned down the house over and over and called every arson a learning experience. Facebook has two competing missions: make the world more open and connected, and make a lot of money. And as Facebook attempts to serve both these missions, they wreak havoc on the rest of us. Look at its version of disrupting the newspaper industry. Facebook has made it easier to share what you're reading with friends. At the same time, Facebook has redirected most of the media industry's profits away from actual journalists and into its own coffers. They have done it without the benefit of recreating the local news desk, without conducting the hard-nosed journalism that keeps politicians and businesses honest, and without meeting even the most basic journalistic standards. This kind of creative disruption that doesn't actually create anything is just disruption. Or look at the impact Facebook's profit motive has had on the way it connects people. Facebook and other tech companies will tell you the internet just holds up a mirror to society and reflects what we already are. But that's not true. To be profitable, Facebook has juiced its algorithm to hold up a magnifying glass to society rather than a mirror, kind of like the way I learned in Boy Scouts to use a magnifying glass to burn a hole in a piece of wood. Concentrating our focus on the most divisive issues, pushing the most controversial opinions to the top of our news feeds. Usually those are posts that play on people's fear and worst impulses, but they may not be based on any sort of fact. Facebook does all it can to manipulate its billions of users so it can direct our eyes towards their ads and turn an even bigger profit. This is no exaggeration. In fact, Facebook tested whether it could manipulate our emotions. The corporation ran a psychological experiment in more than 500,000 users to see if it could manipulate our moods. Turns out it can. And that emotional manipulation has led to horrifying results. I don't have to tell you what amplifying our divisions has done to discourse in our country, not just between political parties. I bet half the people in this room at least had to block an old high school classmate or even a family member on Facebook. Or look around the world, more troubling. A UN report detailed how Facebook was used to spread propaganda in Myanmar that led to genocide. In the first month of violence, more than 600 members of the Rohingya people were killed. More than 700,000 refugees had to flee the country. I don't think for a minute that Facebook created hate, but we know that their competing missions of connecting people and turning a profit created an algorithm and a business model that intensified it. It's hard to remember a world without Facebook. It's hard to remember a time before we had to tell our kids, be careful what you do on the internet because it won't go away. Today, we expect everyone to know that what happens online has consequences offline. It's just common sense. That's why it's so hard for us to understand why Facebook, the company that ushered in this revolution, doesn't seem to comprehend that its actions have real-world consequences. They don't seem to understand why their intention to run their own currency out of a Swiss bank account, the topic of today's hearings, has been met with such fierce opposition. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg has said that Facebook might be more like a government than it is a company. But no one elected Mark Zuckerberg. And what kind of dystopian government wants to turn families and friends against each other rather than bring people together? Well, maybe I shouldn't answer that. Facebook has demonstrated through scandal after scandal that it doesn't deserve our trust. It should be treated like the profit-seeking corporation it is, just like any other company. Mr. Zuckerberg and his executives have proven over and over that they don't understand that governing or accountability. They're not running a government. They're running a for-profit laboratory. No Facebook executives, to my knowledge, have been harmed by Facebook's experiments. But look what has happened everywhere that Facebook has run its social experiments on us. Their motto has been move fast and break things. They certainly have. They moved fast and broke our political discourse. They moved fast and broke journalism. They moved fast and helped incite a genocide. And they've moved fast and they're helping to undermine our democracy. Now Facebook asks people to trust them with their hard-earned paychecks. It takes a breathtaking amount of arrogance to look at that track record and think, you know what we really ought to do next? You know what we ought to do next? Let's run our own bank and our own for-profit version of the Federal Reserve, and let's do it for the whole world. I understand that given the financial crisis and given the massive inequality and unfairness to workers in our country, and given the fact that so many in this body have forgotten what happened 10 years ago, it's tempting to think anyone could do a better job than the Wall Street mega banks. But the last thing we need is to concentrate even more power in huge corporations. Look at Facebook's record. We'd be crazy to give them a chance to experiment with people's bank accounts, to use powerful tools they don't understand, like monetary policy, to jeopardize hardworking Americans' ability to provide for their family. This is a recipe for more corporate power over markets and consumers and fewer protections for my constituents. Thank you, Mr. Sherrod.
Thanks, Senator Brown, and we will now proceed with your testimony. Mr. Marcus, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Crapo, Ranking Member Brown, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is David Marcus, and I'm the head of Calibra at Facebook. For most of my life, I've been an entrepreneur building products aiming at improving people's lives. For many years, my focus has been financial services. I became PayPal's president after I'd acquired my last startup, and I moved to Facebook about 5 years ago to run Messenger, and more recently to lead our blockchain efforts. In my written testimony, I described the mechanics of Libra. Today, I want to explain why I'm optimistic about what Libra can offer the world. But before I get there, I want to make clear that we recognize we're only at the beginning of this journey. Federal Reserve Chairman Powell has said publicly that the process for launching Libra needs to be patient and thorough, rather than a sprint to implementation. Secretary Mnuchin reinforced those views at his press conference yesterday. We strongly agree with both of them. We will take the time to get this right. We expect the review of Libra to be among the most extensive ever. We are fully committed to working with regulators here and around the world. And let me be clear and unambiguous. Facebook will not offer the Libra digital currency until we have fully addressed regulators concerned and received appropriate approvals. I'd like to start by sharing the vision for Libra. Libra is intended to address an important problem. Imagine a daughter who wants to send money home to her mom in another country. Of the $200 she sends, $14 on average will be lost because of fees. It can also take several days or even a week for the mother to receive the money, a delay that can prove disastrous in an emergency. Not to mention, lines may be long and collection points may be in high-crime areas. But it doesn't have to be that way. Wouldn't it be easier and safer if people could securely and inexpensively receive money transfers through their smartphones, just like they do for so many other things today? That's what Libra is about, developing a safe, secure, and low-cost way for people to efficiently move money around the world. To realize Libra's promise, Facebook and 27 other organizations have founded the Independent Libra Association. These include companies in the payments, technology, telecommunications, blockchain, and venture capital industries, as well as nonprofits like Women's World Banking, who are here today, along with staff from the Libra Association. The Libra Association will govern the Libra blockchain network and administer the Libra Reserve. It will establish the rules of the road and will prioritize privacy and consumer protection. And it will implement safeguards that require service providers in the Libra network to fight money laundering, terrorism financing, and other financial crime. We expect these safeguards will at least meet, if not exceed, existing standards and improve the integrity of the global financial system. When fully formed, we expect the Libra Association to include 100 diverse members. Facebook will only have one vote and will not be in a position to control the association. Nor will Facebook or the Libra Association position themselves to compete with sovereign currencies or interfere with monetary policy. In fact, the Libra Association will work with the Federal Reserve and other central banks to minimize the risk of any competition with their currencies or interference with their monetary policies. These areas are properly the province of central banks. Finally, I would like to turn to Facebook's role in realizing the potential of Libra. To facilitate Libra's use, Facebook has established a subsidiary known as Calibra that will offer one of many digital wallets on the Libra network. Using the Calibra wallet, consumers will be able to save, spend, and send Libra right from their smartphone. If this is successful, Facebook will benefit from more commerce across the family of apps. Calibra will be affordable and accessible and will also be safe and secure with strong safeguards to protect users' accounts and information. We expect the Calibra wallet will be governed by rules administered or enforced by FinCEN, OFAC, and the FTC. It will also be regulated by state financial regulators. Calibra is committed to protecting the privacy of its customers. The Calibra wallet will not share individual customer data with the Libra Association or with Facebook, except for limited circumstances such as preventing fraud or criminal activity and complying with the law. I'm excited about the potential that Libra and Calibra hold, and I'm proud to have initiated this effort here in the United States. I believe that if America doesn't lead innovation in digital currency and payments area, others will. If our country fails to act, we could soon see a digital currency controlled by others whose values are dramatically different from ours. I believe that Libra can drive positive change for many people and can provide an opportunity for leadership consistent with our shared values. I look forward to answering your question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marcus. I'm going to start out with the question that you anticipated my question actually at the beginning of your statement. With regard to jurisdiction, frankly, and the regulatory rules of the road. It seems to me that digital technology innovations like this may be inevitable and could be beneficial. I also believe that the United States should lead in developing what the rules of the road should be. You've already indicated your awareness of Secretary Mnuchin's remarks yesterday, a statement that Chairman Powell gave in responses to this committee when he was before us just a week or so ago, and other concerns that have been raised by federal regulators. By setting up Libra in Geneva, Switzerland, it makes me wonder whether the rules of the road and supervisory oversight will be focused more on the Swiss Financial Market Supervisory Authority. However, in your testimony, you state, as you've again stated today, that Facebook will not offer Libra digital currency until we have fully addressed the regulatory concerns and received appropriate approvals. My first question is, do you agree with me that the United States should lead in establishing the rules of the road and the legal oversight of Libra and similar digital currency initiatives?
Chairman, thank you for your question. Yes, absolutely. I agree that the U.S. should lead. And I want to reaffirm that we chose Switzerland not to evade any responsibilities or oversight, but rather because it is a well-established international place with headquarters for WHO, WTO, even the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements. And despite the fact that the Libra Association will be headquartered in Switzerland, it will still register with FinCEN, and as a result, will have oversight from U.S. regulators. But completely agree with you, Chairman, that the U.S. should lead.
So I appreciate that, and you've already indicated that you see that in the United States that you'll need to deal with FinCEN, OFAC, SEC, and some state regulators. I've been thinking about this question. The United States approaches regulation of data and data privacy in a sectoral way. We have multiple regulators over different pieces of economic activity and other types of social activity. Europe does this differently, for example, through its GDPR, where it's a broad-based rule across sectors. If you look at just FSOC in the financial world, we've got the Treasury, the Federal Reserve, the SEC, the FDIC, the OCC, the CFPB, the NCUA, the CFTC, the FHFA. And I guess my question to you is, have you analyzed and determined in our sectoral approach to regulation, which of all of these regulators would have a piece of creating the rules of the road if the United States stays on this sectoral approach?
Chairman, this is not for me to say, but all I can say today is that we're committed to working until we satisfy all the concerns and regulatory and meet the regulatory bar before we proceed. In the U.S., there are a number of regulators that we're engaged with, and we're also engaged with the G7 working group that includes finance ministries and central banks that are looking into Libra, and we're working collaboratively with them as well.
Well, thank you. And it seems to me, I understand that you can't tell us which agencies really are going to take a claim to some piece of what's happening with the establishment of Libra. But you have committed that you will comply with the regulatory requirements of all U.S. regulators.
Yes, Chairman.
Let me go quickly to one more question. I've got a lot of them. I'll have to submit some of those to you after the hearing. You recently told the Banking Committee that Facebook Inc. collects data from transactions that occur on platform and use it for advertising and personalization. Briefly, would you please describe the personal data collection from on-platform transactions? And what I'm talking about is, will this type of information be collected for on-platform transactions that use the Calibra wallet? For example, when a user buys a product on Facebook through Calibra, will Facebook Inc. allow other digital wallets to be used within its family or products? And if you could, just explain how that will work.
Chairman, one thing is really important, and I want to state this very clearly. We will have, with the Calibra wallet, to compete with a number of other wallets that will operate on top of the Libra network. And the Libra network will be interoperable, meaning that wallets can send money from one wallet to another wallet, which is not possible with the current system. And as a result, to earn people's trust, we will have to have the highest standards when it comes to privacy. And the way we've built Calibra is that no financial data or account data that is actually collected in Calibra to offer the service will actually be shared with Facebook. And the way that we've built this is to separate social and financial data, because we've heard loud and clear from people they don't want those two types of data streams connected. So this is the way the system is designed. Now, for transactions that would happen on any of our family of apps, the same way that any merchant completing a transaction, we will offer many options, including, of course, the option for people to pay with credit, debit cards, and other wallets, as well as with their Calibra wallet.
All right, thank you. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I point out in response to Chairman Crapo's questions, you're the only one with, you can talk about competition, but you're the only one with a reach of 2 billion people, so that's important to remember. Facebook has a long track record of abusing users' trust. You know that, Mr. Marcus. Until recently, you headed Facebook's messaging team as they were allowing other companies like Netflix and Spotify and the Royal Bank of Canada access and read Facebook users' private messages. So be clear about what went on at Facebook. Facebook told us they were keeping our data safe when they were really allowing other companies to sift through private messages. You had to shut down those programs after huge backlash. Over and over, Facebook has said, just trust us. And every time Americans trust you, they seem to get burned. Facebook told the FEC in 2012 that it would stop abusing our data, and then last week got a $5 billion with a B, $5,000 million dollar fine for violating that agreement. And as we know, you've even run psychological experiments on users. So sitting here today, Mr. Marcus, after all the times Facebook has abused the public's trust, and you know that, do you really think people should trust Facebook with their hard-earned money? Yes or no?
Senator, you heard it directly from Mark, and I will reiterate this, that trust is primordial.
I didn't hear it directly from Mark. I'm hearing it from you.
Trust is primordial, and we've made mistakes in the past, and we have been working and are continuing to work really hard to get better. And we've invested in a number of programs, notably on privacy, election integrity, and a number of other issues. But I want to answer your question directly for Libra. The reason we designed Libra in such a way that Facebook will only be one among 100 different members of the Libra Association and will have no special privilege means that you will not have to trust Facebook.
Well,
We understand.
but Mr. Marcus, you know better than that. You know that only Facebook has access to 2 billion people. And to say that you are just one of many is simply not true. After people's data and private messages have been stolen and sold, after you've let Russian bots try to throw the 2016 election with no contrition, I might add, after you've abetted genocide in foreign countries, you really think people should trust you with their bank accounts in our economy? I just think that's delusional. Let me ask a related question. If you think hardworking families should trust Facebook's monopoly money, I'd like to see how much you and your company trust it. You get a paycheck in dollars, I assume. I assume you get some pretty good compensation in Facebook stock, too. Will you pledge today in this committee that you and your team who are working on this project will accept 100% of your salary and other compensation in this Facebook currency?
Senator, Libra is not designed to compete with bank accounts or to
That's
compete
not the
with those
question.
things.
The question is, will you accept all of your compensation in this new currency that you want us to trust you so much?
Senator, Libra is not meant to compete with bank accounts. We will, for instance, not pay interest. It's like cash, like digital cash.
That's really avoiding the question. Do you trust your currency so much that you and your team are willing to see 100% of your compensation be paid to you in that currency? Which it could be if you decided it could.
Senator, if your question is whether I would trust all of my assets in Libra, the answer is yes, I would, because it is backed.
My question was,
And my pay.
do you trust this enough to make your compensation paid fully in your currency?
Senator, I would, because it is backed one for one with a reserve.
You could have
that
said
is
yes
going
at the beginning of the question then. Okay.
Senator, with respect, I wanted to clarify that we're not trying to compete with bank deposits.
Okay,
for
let me finish with the last question. You said you're open to Facebook about your company creating, you've said that you're open to feedback about your company creating a new currency. I've told you I think this is a bad idea. The Republican chairman of this committee has raised concerns. The Democratic chair, Maxine Waters, in the Senate, in the House, has demanded you give up on this project. The chairman of the Federal Reserve sat in front of this committee, the Humphrey Hawkins hearing last week, and voiced numerous and serious concerns. Even the President of the United States has told Facebook to back down. That's not to mention the many international leaders who have raised serious alarm. My question is this, is there anything, Mr. Marcus, that elected leaders and economic experts can say that will convince you and Facebook that it should not launch this currency?
Senator, we agree with all of the concerns, very legitimate concerns that were raised by Chairman Powell, Secretary Mnuchin, and many others. And this is why we released our white paper so much ahead of any public launch, because we wanted to ensure that we take the time to get this right. And getting this right means addressing these concerns in full and ensuring that there's proper regulatory oversight for this project. And we're fully committed to doing what it takes to get there.
But if all, Mr. Marcus, with all due respect, if all of us who have seen the collective amnesia of this Congress in terms of what happened 10 years ago in my zip code in Cleveland, 44105, where there were more foreclosures than any zip code in the United States a decade ago. If all of us find this to be a bad idea, think you shouldn't do this launch, are you still going to do it?
Senator, what I heard from Chairman Powell, from Secretary Mnuchin, and many others, is that there were serious legitimate concerns that arose from Libra, and I will commit, again, to do what it takes to address these concerns, and if those concerns are not addressed, and if the regulatory oversight is not appropriate, then we will not launch until it is.
Thank you.
That speaks a lot, Mr. Chairman, to their accountability and their trustworthiness. Thank you.
Senator Toomey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Marcus, for joining us. Let me just say, it strikes me as wildly premature for us to come to the conclusion that we have to act now to prevent what could be a very constructive innovation in financial services. I think there are tremendous potential benefits in blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies. I can imagine, I think it's clear they could help us lower payment transaction costs. They could facilitate access to capital. They provide pseudonymity. They could provide levels of security that other forms of currency have not. Limited pickup as a medium of exchange might be explained partly by the volatility of these cryptocurrencies. And here we have what strikes me as an interesting iteration, maybe, including a mechanism to provide a diminished volatility, which is backing it with a basket of currencies. So I just think we should be exploring this and considering the benefits as well as the risks, and take a prudent approach. But to announce in advance that we have to strangle this baby in the crib, I think is wildly premature. Let me ask a question, Mr. Marcus, about the ultimate motive of this. It seems to many of us that if this were to unfold as you've described, and Calibra and Libra were adopted widely, there would be very, very valuable data about payments. In your testimony, my understanding is you have said that it is your intention never to share, this is for Calibra, never to share that data without consent. So is it the business model, is it the plan to, at some point in the foreseeable future, seek the consent of the participants so that you would be able to commercialize that data somehow?
Senator, no, this is not the intention at all. The plan, as far as Facebook is concerned, to monetize Calibra and this initiative is actually to enable the 90 million small businesses that are currently on the Facebook platform and the many users that are on the platform as well to engage in more commerce together. And if they engage in more commerce, there will be more advertising spend from those small businesses. That would be a first indirect effect of having Calibra and the Libra network be successful. And then over time, what we hope is that through the Calibra wallet, we can offer more services and partnerships with existing banks and financial services companies to drive new revenue streams for the company.
So the intent is never to even seek the consent of the consumer with regard to that payment data, to consent to commercialize it?
Senator, I can't think of any reason right now for us to do this.
My understanding is that the basket of currencies invested in very liquid, high-quality assets that is used as the to provide the intrinsic value of this currency, there would be presumably income from that. We've got a lot of negative interest rates around the world, but let's assume that we've got more positive interest rates than negative. That generates a revenue stream. And I think from your testimony, the intent is to use that to cover some various costs. But at some point, that could become very, very substantial. And I saw a reference to paying out dividends to the founders, the original investors, but this is also described as a not-for-profit. So it strikes me as odd for a not-for-profit to generate what could be huge income and then distribute it to the investors. That sounds like a for-profit. And so one possibility is you could pay dividends in Libra to reflect the value of the income from the underlying assets. But could you explain how paying potentially unlimited dividends to the investor is not a for-profit operation?
Yes, Senator, thank you for your question. First, I want to address the fact that Libra doesn't pay interest because Libra is like cash and is mainly going to be used as a payment instrument. And as far as the interest and the non-for-profit question goes, the way that this is structured is that it will have some income that is actually targeted towards paying the operating costs of the association and potentially returning some return to all of the organizations that will invest in the ecosystem to make it happen. But the plan is not for this income to be, unlimited and to be, all of the income going back to investors. Obviously, we will need to find a way over time to create new pools of incentive that go back to people and businesses using the Libra network. And this is part of the conversation we're notably having on how to manage the reserve and the returns and how to have appropriate oversight on the reserve with this working group that the G7 organized with central banks, finance ministries, and the FSB. And I believe that the reserve will require very specific oversight and regulatory framework in order to ensure proper management.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Tester.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Brown, thank you for being here today. David, I appreciate you being in front of the committee. I have some concerns, a number of concerns, one of them being consumer security. In cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, transactions are final. That means if somebody gets hacked, if somebody steals Bitcoin, there's not much I can do about it. On the other hand, if somebody steals funds from a bank account or makes fraudulent charges on a credit card, the consumer, for the most part, almost always, is held whole by the institution. How will Libra handle theft?
Senator, I can speak for the Calibra wallet, and the Calibra wallet will offer consumer protection against fraud and account recovery the same way that the leading wallets today out there and financial services company provide customer protection.
Okay, so in a situation where a fraudulent charge has been made with my account, you're saying that Calibra will make the consumer whole, correct?
That is correct, Senator.
Is that immediate? Will that be immediate? So, okay, and will it be without question? So what I'm asking is that I pull out my driver's license, my credit card falls on the ground, that's really my fault. But when they take that credit card to Cleveland, Ohio and buy hoverboards with it, the bank always makes it fine, okay? The question is and it's immediate. Will it be immediate in your case?
Yeah, Senator, we will do our best to resolve those types of issues and claims as fast as possible, and we're investing heavily in 24/7 live customer support when it comes to the Calibra wallet to ensure that we can resolve those issues for
I think
our customers.
it's critical that that is resolved before it goes live. So when I deposit money into a bank, I am very confident that I can withdraw it from that bank. Okay, my grandfather was not, by the way. And that's why even on these homesteads that are around, every once in a while you'll find a glass jar full of money because they didn't trust the banks. It was only when we got deposit insurance that the banks had the kind of faith. What kind of faith do we have in Libra?
Thank you for your question, Senator. Libra is actually going to be backed by a reserve, one for one, so it's not ever going to be a fractional reserve.
Okay.
And as a result, it is designed to be stable and retain its value.
I got that. So in 2008, as the ranking member pointed out, there was a run on the banks. There were some big companies that went belly up, including 157 banks, Lehman Brothers, WAMU, Bear Stearns, and others. Nobody anticipated there would be a run like there was. Nobody. how can you assure us? And by the way, I still felt confident that my money was safe in my bank. How can you make those assurances? How can you do it when we're talking about a for-profit entity, whether it's called nonprofit or not? It's a for-profit entity. You're not doing this just for the fun of it. How can we be assured that our money is going to be there?
Senator, when it comes to Libra, because the reserve is actually one-for-one and not fractional, the issue we've had in the events that you highlighted were because some of these institutions didn't have the appropriate reserves.
Didn't have, okay.
And we also want the appropriate regulatory oversights to ensure that anyone will have the ability to understand how big the reserve is and how many Libra coins, if you will, are in circulation at any given point in time to rest assured that the value they hold is backed at any given point in time with the same amount in the reserve.
So when we met last week, and thanks for coming in, by the way, the reserve question has to be answered, and it has to be something, by the way, that's not up to you guys to determine what that reserve is, because when times get tough, stuff happens, okay? And so there has to be that kind of reliability there for that. Otherwise, we're in no different situation than we were as we went into the 1930s, because you are a big outfit. Just let me, there's been a lot of comments about Facebook today that's brought up about some of the stuff that's happened on Facebook that hasn't been meritorious, and I'm being generous. And it's true. And it has to do with bad actors, because quite frankly, there's people on Facebook that are doing stuff all the time that have a different agenda than right and good and mom and dad and apple pie and Chevrolet, okay? How are you going to prevent bad actors from using the application? And the past performance with Facebook has been not that aggressive. Let the money come in, we'll worry about it later. And it has had some pretty negative impacts on a lot of stuff worldwide. Tell me how you're going to prevent bad actors from using this, and then I'll shut up.
Senator, when anyone will open a Calibra account, because you will need to open a separate account, you cannot actually just use your Facebook account to open a Calibra wallet. You will have to authenticate and upload your government-issued ID. As a result, we'll have real identity on top of the Calibra wallet, and we will have systems and a dedicated team to prevent fraudulent activity and, of course, to meet our requirements of anti-money laundering and counterterrorism funding monitoring.
It's a huge issue, and I think it would benefit this effort if Facebook did a better job right now doing exactly what you said. Thank you for being here.
Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Marcus, thank you for being here. I think you've said, well, first off, I'd like to associate myself with some of the comments of Senator Toomey. I think it's a good idea for us to explore this because, quite honestly, cryptocurrency now is still kind of a wild, wild west that is not very well regulated. And there are a number of examples that I'm aware of where consumers have lost everything with their engagement with some of the better-known cryptocurrencies out there. I'm trying to understand the distinction. You're going to have a transaction processing platform that I think several people have agreed to enter a consortium. I assume that that's with the intent of using the underlying platform. You're not creating something that's at the expense of credit card companies or other wallet platforms on the internet. Is it a facilitator for those and take all comers, assuming that they're trusted payment platforms?
Yes, Senator, and I want to stress that both Visa and MasterCard are taking this journey with us, as well as PayPal and Mercado Pago and Coinbase and a number of other wallets. But I want to also stress that you don't have to become a member to accept Libra as a form of payment or to build services on top of the Libra network.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at. There's a distinction between the currency, which would be a Libra, and the underlying infrastructure you're providing to facilitate payments. Is that correct?
That is correct, Senator.
Now I want to get to something that I think you all have to get right. I'd love to, first off, what kind of capital investment are you all projecting? If you're hoping to launch it next year, I assume you've got a pretty exhaustive implementation plan in place. What kind of capital investment are y'all looking at to put in the underlying infrastructure?
Senator, I think that's one of the reasons why Facebook is an appropriate sponsor as well, is we have the resources to innovate, and we're ready to put those resources to build valuable tools for people, and that's what we're going to do here. We haven't determined exactly how much we are going to invest, and this is a process that...
So the consortium would be a part of the investment?
Yes, every member, Senator, will have an opportunity to invest and participate in funding the network.
I think something that would be very helpful for this committee and maybe other members is to get really a briefing on the entire stack here. I think you said repeatedly you're not a bank. You're not going to hold deposits. You can't have a run in a traditional sense. I understand what you're doing with the reserve, I guess, for transactions and process. I think it'd be very helpful for the committee members and staff to understand that. So a briefing of that type would be what I've been able to study on the internet. It's fairly limited in terms of really understanding the stack and then understanding what parts of the stack probably should be subject to some sort of regulatory oversight. I do want to express a concern. We had a committee hearing on judiciary, I think it was just last week, talking about how social media platforms have been hijacked by transnational criminal organizations, by pedophiles, by sexual predators. I don't think that you ever implemented or no social media platform, I hope, was implemented for that purpose, but people are smart and devious and they hijack it. I hope that as a part of your implementation, you're looking at all the ways that your payment platform, like all the other ones, could be potentially exploited for criminal activities. And it's another reason why I think a briefing on the fuller architecture, the implementation timeline, maybe your own suggestion of where regulatory oversight would be pretty important to making sure you're going to create a trusted platform. We need to get that kind of information to the committee and to the members who are interested in digging in. I believe that if the United States can either follow some other jurisdiction on pursuing this or we can lead it. And I believe in the same way that we have the gold standard for banking system in the United States, we have an opportunity to set an international standard that will ultimately provide greater consumer protections for a lot of the other upstart equivalent, not exactly equivalent architecturally to what you're planning on doing. So I think it's worth you all doing this. I do have concerns about privacy, about potential exploitation of the platform, but I believe the United States, our regulatory environment, and a consortium that's well-funded is more likely to produce a gold standard, something that does drive down the cost of transactions, actually providing better value for people who have the least amount of money to pay the transaction fees that they're paying today. So I look forward to seeing this develop. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you, Mr. Marcus. I'm all for financial innovation and better payment methods. I'm intrigued by blockchain and distributed ledger technology, but I share a lot of the concerns that my colleagues do up here, particularly with an enterprise as large as yours, 2 billion users. If we look back and during the antitrust investigation of Microsoft during the 1990s, the Justice Department found that a key strategy that Microsoft used, which was called internally, dubbed embrace, extend, extinguish. The gist of this strategy was to go out and find a new technology and then either copy it or buy it up. I call it catch and kill. It has been a technology, or it's been a methodology that Facebook has used extraordinarily effectively, buying up or copying other emerging technologies that might be disruptive to your dominance. Now we move into blockchain, which again has the ability to be extraordinarily disruptive. Why shouldn't we view Facebook's efforts here with Libra and Calibra simply as another manifestation of the catch and kill approach?
Senator, I'm glad you asked that question because the way that we have developed the technology, the early technology for Libra, is that we've invested, we've put our best engineering talent in building the code base, the technology for the Libra network. And then what we did is we open sourced it. And as a result, it doesn't belong to us anymore. It is now belonging to the community, and they will help build the code, and we will relinquish our control over both the code base and the network through the process.
Well, let me follow up then, because will you commit that Facebook will not develop preferential incentives that unfairly tie Calibra, which is going to be your money-making venture, to other Facebook products as a way from prohibiting or Libra users to use wallets other than Calibra?
Senator, I'd even go further, which is that not only have we started the technology and shared it in open source, but the network is actually completely
No, that's not the question. The question is incentives within your existing products. You didn't answer Chairman Crapo's question, where he said, with your dominance, how do you make sure that your already existing global platforms like WhatsApp and Messenger will actually support third-party wallets? Will you at least clarify your answer to Chairman Crapo's question and say Facebook will make sure that WhatsApp and Messenger will support third-party wallets?
Senator,
Yes or no?
Senator, I want to clarify because there's a nuance.
Not clarification. This is fair. You didn't answer Chairman Crapo. Please answer my question.
Senator, the network is interoperable, meaning that people who are using the Libra network from within WhatsApp will be able to send and receive from other wallets that are not Calibra wallets.
So if a user wishes to use, a Facebook user wishes to use a wallet other than Calibra, will you make it easy to allow the export of their keys, their financial data, and other Calibra data? If somebody started as a Calibra data wallet user but decided, I don't want Calibra anymore, I want to go to Nuco, will you make it easy for them to move their keys, their data, their financial information all over to that other third party?
Absolutely, Senator.
So so right there you've agreed on data portability and potential interoperability in terms of the use of these wallets. So my hope will be you'll have that same approach when I lay out my legislation for data portability and interoperability on existing platform use. So I hope your commitment on Calibra will extend to your current applications as well. Can I get a commitment there as well?
I cannot commit for other parts of the company.
Well, I appreciate your team who has been willing to work with us, but it would be really great if you go ahead and make that same commitment on Facebook basic products, because if we want to bring in competition, you've got to have that data portability, interoperability. But at least on Calibra, you are on the record as making sure that you will put no barriers in place to moving from one wallet to another.
Senator, we believe that this is actually primordial for the Libra network, that consumers have the ability to move from wallet to ensure that there are good competitive dynamics that work in favor of consumers. We really believe
And
that.
so, again, I'll come back again to Chairman Crapo's question about your globally dominant platform products already in terms of WhatsApp and Messenger. They will support third-party wallets other than Calibra.
Senator, I want to clarify, which is that...
And every time you start with, I want to clarify, gives me great level of pause. Chairman Crapo's asked the question, I've asked the question. Seems to me pretty simple. WhatsApp and Messenger, globally dominant products. Will they support third-party wallets, or will they have incentives that will push people to simply using the Facebook product, Calibra?
So this is why I want to clarify, Senator, if I may, because it's a nuanced answer. If your question is whether we will embed other wallets inside of WhatsApp and Messenger, the answer is no. If you're asking whether other wallets will have a full interoperability, meaning that you don't have to use the Calibra wallet inside of Messenger and WhatsApp to be able to send or receive money to people who are using the Calibra wallet inside of Messenger and WhatsApp, the answer is yes.
Embedding is different than putting preferential treatment and preferential areas. I didn't get to the questions around third-party developers having some concerns about giving access. But again, Mr. Chairman, I think some of your questions that you've asked is one of the reasons we're going to need to take a great deal of time to work this through. Thank you, Mr. Marcus.
Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Marcus, thanks very much for appearing here before us today. Before I begin my questions, I just want to take a moment to commend the South Dakota Division of Banking for their forward thinking and willingness to allow for innovation in the digital currency space. Another founding member of the Libra Association, Anchorage, just received permission from the Division of Banking to become a South Dakota chartered trust company. Thanks to the business-friendly climate in my state, Anchorage, which is a Silicon Valley crypto vault company, has chosen to open its second headquarters in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Now, the significance of this extends far beyond the borders of South Dakota. Our Division of Banking should serve as a model for how governments can study and learn about digital currencies, and while at the same time allowing pioneering companies like Anchorage to innovate and try out new products and services. So once again, congratulations to Anchorage and welcome to South Dakota. I'm curious, I've had an opportunity on several different occasions to travel to Africa and to watch what's going on within Africa and the challenges they have there with very small amounts of value within their own currencies. And yet on a day-to-day basis, there's literally millions of people there that look to buy very small incremental items on a day-to-day basis. They don't have any type of a product out there today really that works well that's internationally based. Can you talk a little bit about what you see in other countries, the direction they're going, and what the opportunities are for this type of a platform to allow a very simple and inexpensive way to transact for values received or currencies or products, commodities, and exchange without a high cost of doing so? And just a thought in that regard. I haven't really heard that discussed yet today.
I appreciate your question, Senator. The way that anyone in the world will have the ability to use Libra using the wallet of their choice will be to install a small app on a $40 Android device with a basic data plan. And from that point on, have the ability to move from the cash economy to the digital economy and benefit from having the ability to transact, not only domestically, but internationally at very low or no cost, and benefit from services that will be built on the Libra network by other companies as well. And as a result, we really hope, and this is our ambition, that we can lower the barriers for access to modern financial services and massively lower costs for the people who need it the most. And in the process, potentially also lower access to capital, because if suddenly you have a global platform that enables free or low-cost money movements, then access to capital should be cheaper, and the barriers will be lower as well.
See, I think you're going to have a lot of competition. I think there's going to be a lot of different organizations that understand that this is the wave of the future. And I think the questions have been fair with regard to the different applications that are out there and how they would fit on your platform and be allowed. And I think that's going to be an item of discussion for some time to come. But with it also comes the kind of the regulatory layout that you work within. You've chosen to set this up in Switzerland. What did Switzerland offer that the United States did not? And what is it about our regulatory framework that puts us perhaps at a disadvantage?
Senator, the choice of Switzerland, again, is not to evade any responsibility or regulatory oversight. It was really because we believe that a global digitally native currency that will be used by people all around the world would benefit from being headquartered in an international place that is also the home of many respected international organizations. And that was where we came from. The reality, though, is if you look at the current composition of the Libra Association members, those are mostly American companies. Calibra is an American subsidiary of a large American company, will be licensed and operate in the U.S. And I think that the beneficiaries in terms of companies of the Libra network will likely be American companies under the American jurisdiction and with proper regulatory oversight in the U.S.
Well, I think the proposal that you has huge potential. And I think the challenges for the transaction of the exchange for services and so forth today still has lots of obstacles to be overcome, including that of security and privacy. But nonetheless, we're going to look forward to observing and participating in this, because I really do think it's the wave of the future. And as Senator Tillis said, we are either going to be responding to it, or we can be actively involved in learning from it. So, thank you. Thank you.
Senator Cortez Masto.
Mr. Marcus, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. And answering the questions. This is obviously very, very innovative for all of us, and it's exciting. But I do have a couple of questions to see if you've thought through some of the concerns I think many of us also have. And one of them for me in particular is because something I dealt with as Attorney General of the state of Nevada is the issue of money laundering. I know there's clear regulatory oversight that we have right now to address the issue of money laundering that comes in so many forms, but one of them is terrorist financing the money laundering supports and terrorist financing. So my question to you is, how will the Libra Association itself be ensuring that it is guarding against any type of money laundering activity? Have you thought about that?
Yes, Senator, and this is something that I care about deeply personally. The way we're thinking about protecting the integrity of the network from money laundering, criminal activity, terrorism funding is by not only moving a lot of cash transaction in the digital world, where cash transaction is where most crimes currently happen, and we believe that if a lot of transactions move to digital, it'll be better. And the way that we are applying AML programs is that as far as the Calibra wallet is concerned, we will have strong identity, because for every new Calibra account open, you will have to upload a government-issued ID and authenticate, and as a result, we'll have AML programs on the Calibra wallet. As far as the Libra network is concerned, we will have an AML program as well, and despite the fact that the Libra Association will be based in Switzerland, it will register with FinCEN, and as a result, we'll have to comply with AML and KYC practices.
So I'm glad you just brought up FinCEN, because that was my next question. Would the association itself fall under the Bank Secrecy Act jurisdiction?
Senator, the association will not actually touch consumers. It will process, it will just organize.
So who is going to be subject to the Bank Secrecy Act and FinCEN then? I guess that's my question.
So the Calibra wallet and all of the wallets that are operating under that jurisdiction will, of course, comply with BSA, will perform perform KYC and have AML programs. And we're engaged with Treasury on this to make sure that the setup of the network is not only not going to take a step back in terms of the efficacy of the AML and CTR programs, CFT programs, but improve the efficacy because of the way that we're implementing and configuring the network.
So you're currently talking right now with FinCEN and FinCEN to get sign-off on how you address money laundering issues?
We are, Senator.
Okay. I appreciate you providing more transparency around that. And let me just say, this is a new day and age. When it comes to cash and carrying around a briefcase full of cash, transnational criminals and terrorist activists don't do that anymore. And what you are creating right now is an opportunity for them to engage in continuing money laundering and criminal activity. So know that. That's one. To say that we're going to be complying with AML activities is one thing. I want to see the specifics of it. So I appreciate you willingness to talk with FinCEN and talk with us about how we address this issue. Another one that has come up as I sit on banking committee here, and we've talked about it several times, is sanctions laws. The head of policy and communication for Libra was recently on a podcast and was asked how Libra would react if a government like the United States required that the Libra Association blacklist certain addresses in order to comply with sanctions laws, as is typical in what we do here. The response was, I quote, "The association won't interact with any jurisdiction. It will instead leave that to the entities that provide an on and off ramp to Libra, the currency." Can you clarify that? How are we supposed to address this issue when it comes to blacklisting and sanctions laws?
Senator, this is a question that we're also engaged with the Treasury Department on, and the one thing that we have committed is that we will respect the travel rule and, as a result, perform the right checks, and including OFAC checks. And this is definitely true for the Calibra wallet. I don't know in what context those comments were made, but I believe that it may be because the association itself is not running anything. It's just coordinating governance. But the actual service providers that are going to be regulated service providers will enforce travel rule, perform OFAC checks, and ensure that those who are subject will, of course, perform those functions.
Thank you. I notice my time is up. I have further questions. I'll submit those for the record as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Kennedy.
Mr. Markers, I'm going to move kind of fast here today, so I apologize in advance if I interrupt you. We only have 5 minutes. I want to first agree with a lot of the comments that Senator Toomey made. We need to encourage innovation, but I want to explore today the underpinnings of Libra. Can we agree that a banker should be trustworthy?
Yes, Senator.
Can we agree that a banker should be honest?
Yes, Senator.
Can we agree that a banker should respect a customer's privacy?
Senator, yes, of course, but we are not going to engage in banking services.
Can we agree
That's
that,
what you're asking.
that Facebook knew in the spring of 2016 that Russia was attempting through Facebook to disrupt the U.S. presidential election?
Senator, with regards to those events, we definitely moved too slow, and we've learned...
Isn't it true that your general counsel and your chief security officer knew in the spring of 2016? Isn't it true that Mr. Zuckerberg and your CFO, Ms. Sandberg, I believe, knew in December of 2016? Isn't it also true that you didn't tell your board of directors, they didn't tell the board of directors until 2017? Until September 2017? Isn't that accurate?
Senator, we definitely moved too slow to recognize the activities that were happening on the platform.
Well,
but since...
excuse me for interrupting, but I only got 5 minutes. In September 2017, when senior management told your board of directors, Facebook also issued a statement. It said, yeah, the Russians have tried to disrupt the election through Facebook, but they only spent $100,000 and they only ran 3,000 ads. That was a lie, wasn't it?
I'm sorry, Senator.
That was a lie, wasn't it?
I don't believe it was, but...
Well, later Facebook admitted that actually the Russian ad had reached 126 million people, didn't they?
Senator, I believe that the people who answered that question at the time answered to the best of their knowledge at the time.
Right. When Mr. Zuckerberg was conducting his listening tour across the whole country, first half, I think, of 2017, when he was feeding cows in Wisconsin and having dinner with refugees in Minneapolis, he knew about the Russian involvement, didn't he?
I don't know, Senator.
Okay. He didn't say anything, did he?
I don't remember the timeline, Senator.
Okay. In the spring of 2017, spring and summer, our Intelligence Committee in the U.S. Senate started investigating the Russian attempts to disrupt the election through Facebook. Facebook issued a statement saying there were no such attempts. That was a lie, wasn't it?
Senator, I don't remember the timeline, and I believe that people have always answered truthfully with the information they had at the time.
Okay, in June of 2018, let me fast forward a little bit, we found out that Facebook was sharing user data with device makers, a whole bunch of them, 40 of them, Amazon, Microsoft, Samsung. Facebook didn't disclose that to the users, did it?
Senator, my understanding, and again, it was not my responsibility or my team, is that this was designed to enable those phone manufacturers to build integration within the Facebook product to serve those consumers using these devices.
Okay. Your algorithms are such that if I watch a video on a topic, I'm immediately shown videos on more extreme versions of that topic. We call that stickiness. Is that correct?
This is not the way that the Facebook platform operates today, Senator.
But it did for a long time, right?
Senator Mark really led through the
Well,
change.
can we agree on this, that Facebook has now become the major news source for many, many people, probably the major news source? Is that true?
I don't believe it is, Senator. I believe that more and more people are interacting with other
Well,
people on the
60%
platform.
of your users say they get their news off Facebook as their primary source. Isn't it true, I really want your opinion, that Facebook has chosen to advance a set of values in which truthful reporting has been displaced by flagrant displays of bullshit?
I don't know how to answer that question, Senator.
Okay. Well, here's my last question, and I agree again with Senator Toomey. I have great respect for Facebook, but Facebook now wants to control the money supply. What could possibly go wrong?
Senator, we will not control either Libra, the currency, or the association, and we agree that no company should control such a network or digital currency.
I'd like a second round if we could, Mr. Chairman.
If we have time, I will be glad to do that for senators who so wish. Senator Smith.
Thank you very much. Welcome. So I got a lot of questions about this. You'll understand the level of skepticism that you see here, and I appreciate you being here to answer our questions. I want to try to understand a little bit better this association. So the Libra Association expects to have you think about 100 founding members who together you say will be making decisions about investment strategy and regulatory compliance and social impact goals. Who's in charge?
Senator, the way that the governance of the association works is that you'll have this council of 100 or more members that will make decisions and will elect a board that will be between 5 to 19 members, and that board will then, of course, elect a managing director, and the association will have a staff to perform the governance function that it is supposed to look after.
You know, in the United States Senate, we also have 100 members, but it's clear who's in charge. Mitch McConnell is in charge. And so I'm trying to understand in this sort of...
I thought it was shared.
Chair Crapo is in charge of this committee.
Oh, it's shared.
I'm trying to understand, like, in this sort of, you described sort of almost a consensus building. Will decisions be made on a consensus basis? I understand that there's some sort of a 2/3 majority, but help me understand how decisions get made.
Of course, Senator. The decisions are basically, the structure of the governance is one where there are certain things that should be really hard to change. And those are important things to the spirit of how the network is supposed to operate, the spirit in which the reserve is supposed to operate. And I believe that when it comes to the reserve, by the way, we will need appropriate regulatory oversight.
So would there be like a constitution or a body of rules that would be agreed to ahead of time that would guide the decision-making?
Yes, Senator, and it will be made public.
And how do you parse out kind of minority rights versus majority rights on this board?
As it stands, the way that it's starting, every member, if we have 100 member, will have an equal voice at the council.
But what if there's a disagreement and there's, you know, is the minority then just automatically overwhelmed by the majority in this board?
It will depend on the type of decision. Not all decisions will need supermajority to reach a consensus, Senator.
So it seems to me possible in any board, in any group of humans, people develop coalitions, and it just seems to me that there's a big question about how, you know, every voice is going to be heard in this incredibly powerful association headquartered in Switzerland. Is this board like a corporate board in the sense that, what if there were conflict of interest that developed?
We hope that we'll avoid conflicts of interests, of course, Senator. But again, we have a lot of work to do. between now and the launch. And this is why we shared our white paper early on to get all of the feedback and the input and ensure that we can address all the concerns, get proper regulatory oversight. And part of that is also going to be governance of the association.
Well, I think these are really, really important questions because we're imagining this association headquartered in Switzerland that would have amazing power over the financial health of this country, over my constituents, and over, you know, so I think these questions of accountability are extremely important. Let me ask, switch topics a little bit. What's the long-term business opportunity for Facebook here?
Senator, two business opportunities. One is really the ability for the 90 million small businesses and the many users we have on the platform to transact with one another. So as a result, more commerce on the Facebook platform and our family of apps. And if there's more commerce, there will be more advertising revenue for Facebook. So that's one indirect effect of enabling.
More commercial activity on Facebook equals more money for Facebook, more money.
Yes, Senator.
Yeah.
And the other part of it is if we earn people's trust with the Calibra wallet and they decide to use it over time, we can offer, in partnerships with financial institutions and banks, other services that will be new sources of revenue for the company.
So competing on wallet, you know, getting a bigger market share of wallets. But it seems to me, I know I'm out of time, Mr. Chair, but it seems to me that what Facebook is really good at is figuring out how to monetize people's personal data, not only the data that Facebook gets directly, but the ambient data that Facebook collects through all of the many, many millions of activities that we take every year. That what Facebook is really good at is capitalizing literally on that data. And so I have to say I'm not reassured by your statement that you can't see any reason right now why there wouldn't be data sharing between these platforms. I have some additional questions for the record, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator McSally.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Marcus, I don't trust Facebook. And it's because of the repeated violations of your users' privacy, repeated deceit, and I am not alone, as you know. In 2011, there was a consent decree with the Federal Trade Commission related to your privacy practices. So that's where it started there with investigative bodies, but it hasn't ended. Even after that consent decree, Facebook is under investigation again. And FTC has approved a fine for about $5 billion just recently because of your repeated violations of your users' information. For example, without users' permission, sharing personal profile information with outside software developers, selling that off again, data breaches, allegations that you've repeatedly changed users' privacy settings without notice. The SEC, of course, is also investigating events surrounding the sale of personal information from Facebook. The New York State's Office of Attorney General has an investigation into unauthorized collection of 1.5 million Facebook users' email contact databases, on and on and on. There's allegations of bugs that, oh, sorry, we didn't mean to allow them to download photos, and it's one after another after another after another. So I don't trust you guys. So instead of cleaning up your house, now you're launching into another business model with Calibra here, and you've got documents that talk about your privacy commitment for Calibra. So in that privacy commitment, you say that you won't be sharing account information or financial data with Facebook or any third party without customer consent. So how do we know that this isn't going to change, and how do we know you're actually going to do that based on your track record of failing and violating and deceiving in the past?
It's a totally fair question, Senator, and I want to answer it in two parts. The first is that, as you know, we've been working really, really hard on addressing the issues, some of them you've raised. We have invested incredible resources in election integrity and privacy. Mark has made it his top priority. And we will continue to do that until those issues are fully resolved and addressed to satisfaction. On the Libra side, we have designed this network in such a way that Facebook doesn't and won't control it or the currency, and that there will be plenty of competition. And I want to take a moment to explain why there will be a lot of competition. First, there's interoperability. So regardless of the wallet you choose, you'll be able to pay across wallets, which is currently not possible.
I don't want to get into the technical stuff. I'm talking about the trust issue. So you violated privacy in the past as a company. You continue to have issues. You continue to change the privacy even rules without informing users, yet you're launching a new product and you're claiming that their privacy is going to be protected. So how are users to know that that's also not going to change and they're not going to be violated? That's what I'm getting at. The core issue here is trust.
And Senator, the point is really that people can get all of the benefit from this network without using our wallet. And I know that we will have to earn people's trust for a very long period of time in order to get the benefit of them wanting to use the Calibra wallet instead of any of the other wallets they'll have the choice of using.
So let me follow up also. I know Senator Toomey asked a question. Your privacy document says that Calibra will be transparent, offering customer choices and controls using clear, simple language and easy-to-find privacy controls that detail what data is collected, used, shared, and for what purposes. You're telling me, and I think you said this already, but can you clarify, the user will not be able to have consent as to their data being collected?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question, Senator.
Okay, for Calibra, you specifically say in your privacy document that there will be easy to understand controls on what data is being collected. So will the user have consent for their data being collected when they're using Calibra?
Yes, Senator.
So do they have to consent in order to use Calibra?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, so that's really no choice, right? So you're in order to use it, your data has to be collected. There's no option to opt out.
Well, Senator, if you want to use the Calibra wallet, you will have to, for instance, authenticate and upload a government-issued ID. And if consumers don't want us to collect that government-issued ID, for instance, at the very first step, then of course they won't be able to use the service because we will be compliant to KYC regulation.
So what's the business model of Calibra then? You mentioned the interface with Facebook just recently, that the more people are using it, the more people will stay on Facebook, and then you can just continue to collect their personal information and target them with ads and sell off their information. Is that the business model of Calibra, or how are they going to make money?
With respect, Senator, that's not what I said. But what I said is...
But that's actually what happens.
I'll focus on the specific question you asked, Senator, which is that we have 90 million businesses, many of them that grow thanks to the Facebook advertising platform. They're able to reach new consumers, they're able to hire, and we believe that if they now have the ability to sell to more constituents across the Facebook platform, and more people have access to the services and products of those 90 million businesses, then more commerce will happen on the Facebook platform.
Wonderful public good that you guys are committed to. I know I'm way over time here, and that was extremely sarcastic. Thank you.
Senator Sinema.
Thank you, Chairman Crapo, and thank you to our witness for being here today. Mr. Marcus, Arizonans have heard a lot of promises from Facebook over the years about privacy. For example, Facebook promised when it acquired WhatsApp that it would not scrape our message data to deliver targeted ads. But 2 years later, Facebook broke its promise and monetized our personal message data. With real doubts about Facebook's commitment to privacy, Arizonans are rightfully skeptical about the proposed digital currency Libra. The goal of Libra is to reach the unbanked and underbanked, which is a noble goal. But it's important to remember that those who haven't utilized a bank or credit card will be more susceptible to scammers and predatory practices. Your head of product, Kevin Weil, told TechCrunch on June 18th that there are, quote, no plans for the Libra Association to take a role in actively vetting, end quote, developers of wallets, exchanges, or other related apps. But failing to vet developers would expose Arizonans to scammers, which is unacceptable. Do you stand by Kevin's statement?
Senator, first I want to correct something, which is that WhatsApp is fully encrypted, so even Facebook doesn't have access to messages on WhatsApp. But to answer your question, which is a very important one, I would say two things. One is that while the Libra Association will not get in the way of developers developing things, we will need, as an association, to find the right approach to ensure that publishing services on the Libra network has controls. And the one thing I want to say as well is that financial literacy is really important, and that at the Libra Association, there will be grant and investment made into financial literacy. And as far as the Calibra wallet is concerned, not only will we have consumer protections that will protect your constituents if they ever have a fraud issue, but we will make sure that there's appropriate education in the product from the get-go.
Well, that was very helpful information, but that response doesn't actually address my concern. Because if Libra's goal is to reach a population that studies show are especially vulnerable to financial fraud and abuse, without more vetting processes for these developers, Arizonans will be more likely to be scammed using Libra, which can jeopardize their hard-earned savings and financial security. So while we're on the subject of scams, here's a hypothetical scenario for you. Let's say an unsavory app developer that's based in Pakistan utilizes an exchange that's based in Thailand to rip off an Arizonan who's using a wallet that was built in Spain. So they steal all of their Libra. And that, of course, is minted by an association based in Switzerland. So which law enforcement or governmental agency in which country does the Arizonan call to seek his or her legal and financial recourse in this situation?
That's an excellent question, Senator. And the answer to that is that your constituents will likely use an American, US-based wallet provider that will have consumer protections and that will make your constituents whole if something bad happens to them.
So in my scenario, this Arizonan was using a wallet that was built in Spain. Would they still have access to American recourse for legal and financial problems?
Senator, it will depend on the wallet consumer protection, the same way that today you have different consumer protections and services offered by different financial institutions and others. So, and I believe that it will be the role of the Libra Association to ensure that there's proper education so that consumers can make informed choices.
Well, I think the point here is that despite having legal and technical background in this room, this is a difficult question to answer. You posited that they would likely be using an American wallet, but if they were using a wallet from another country, that complicates the answer. This is a real challenge, and Arizonans deserve answers on what rights they would have as consumers and how they would use them. I also have some national security concerns. Despite granting anonymity, traditional cryptocurrencies are not the first choice of drug cartels, terrorists, and human traffickers because cryptocurrencies aren't very easy to use. But Libra is not a cryptocurrency. It's a digital currency that promises both anonymity and ease of use, which raises concerns about its potential exploitation for illicit purposes. I'm concerned that drug cartels and human traffickers, major problems, of course, in Arizona and border regions, may try and use Libra to finance their operations along our southern border. Your testimony says that you'll comply with the rules set by the Office of Foreign Assets Control with respect to financial sanctions. But if a drug cartel or one of its sanctioned persons attempts to complete a transaction using Libra, would you comply with OFAC policy, or would you allow a drug cartel transaction to be added to the ledger?
Senator, first of all, Libra is not anonymous, so we will have an AML program, and as far as the Calibra wallet is concerned, we will have full KYC and AML programs. As a result, those types of activities will be very difficult to conduct on this network, and you have my commitment that we will take the time before launch to ensure that the network and the proper measures are taken to avoid this network to be used for other purposes than it was designed for.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, my time's expired. This is just a proposal, but folks in my state are concerned, and we need better answers. So I look forward to working with you and the committee on this. I yield back.
Thank you. Senator Cotton.
Mr. Marcus, thank you for your appearance and your testimony. Your CEO, in testimony before Congress, referred to Silicon Valley as an extremely left-wing place. That's why so many center-right voices have concerns about censorship on platforms like Facebook, but also Twitter and Google and so forth. I worry about the possibility that a digital wallet and digital currency like Libra could extend that into the payment system. There is reason to worry about that because Democratic members of this committee have made it a habit of contacting major financial institutions and encouraging them not to do business with, say, gun manufacturers or with government contractors who serve ICE or the Customs and Border Patrol. What safeguards, if any, will Libra have to ensure that you treat on par people with views that may be disfavored in an extremely left-wing place like Silicon Valley?
I appreciate your question, Senator, and you're right that Silicon Valley tends to have a bias, but I want to reaffirm that Facebook is a technology company where ideas across the political spectrum are welcome and treated equally. And as far as Calibra and the Calibra wallet is concerned, we wanted to ensure that people, as long as they have a legitimate use of the product, can do what they want with their money. Of course, there are some restrictions and regulated products, but my commitment to you is we will be thoughtful in writing those policies, and we'll be happy to follow up with you when we get closer to finalizing those policies.
So that doesn't sound like much safeguard to me, other than a commitment before you come into pressure from Democrats. And just wait till tomorrow, till you go before the House Financial Services Committee. If you think the Democrats on this committee have hounded banks, wait until you see what you're in for over there. I mean, how do we know? So a federally licensed firearm dealer wants to sell firearms at a gun show, or maybe a neighbor wants to sell a shotgun to his neighbor, or a Christian baker wants to practice his faith when he bakes his cake, or someone wants to pay a subscription to, say, Breitbart instead of the New York Times. What confidence can people who have center-right views have that Libra is going to be available to them on an equal basis as those who want to shut down gun retailers or shut down oil pipelines or government contractors who are working with immigration and customs enforcement?
Senator, firearms, for instance, are a regulated product. They're already regulated and treated as such on the Facebook platform. And I know it's a complicated issue. And when it comes to writing this policy, again, I'm committing that we will be very thoughtful. I have to say that as far as I'm concerned personally, I believe that we should only get in the way in very exceptional cases and by being thoughtful of getting in the way of people doing what they want with their money as long as it's lawful. But we also need to be thoughtful in how we write those policies.
Well, thank you for that commitment, and I do hope we have transparency, because I assure you, you'll be getting letters from that side of the dais, to say nothing of the House Financial Service Committee Democrats, just like all the major banks on Wall Street have been getting those letters. And for that matter, your own workforce is going to bring that kind of pressure to bear on you as well. Let's shift gears in the time I have left. We've heard a lot of talk about money laundering this morning. It's a big problem. I share the concerns we've heard this morning. Money laundering is typically done by individuals engaged in criminal activities like drug trafficking, human trafficking, and so forth. There's also the question of sanctions. One of the advantages of having the world's reserve currency is that we have the ability to impose extremely effective worldwide sanctions because most, if almost all transactions are dealt with in dollars worldwide. Could you talk a little bit about how Libra would have an impact on the United States dollar as the reserve currency and therefore on the United States government's ability to impose sanctions? This is different from money laundering about individuals. We're talking about sanctions on nation states like, say, Iran, that is developing its own cryptocurrency and cracking down on others specifically to try to avoid sanctions.
Senator, I'm glad you brought this up because I believe that if we don't lead in the space, others will. And the same way that we will end up having two internets and and two different infrastructures. We will have two different financial systems and two different financial networks, and one will be out of reach of sanctions that are so effective in enforcing our foreign policy and preserving our national security. And this is why I believe that Libra is an alternative that consumers will have the ability to use with wallets that will de facto enforce the sanctions that are led by our national security apparatus and Treasury. So I actually believe that if we stay put, we're going to be in a situation in 10, 15 years where we're really going to have half of the world that is going to operate on, by the way, a blockchain-based technology that will be out of reach from our national security apparatus.
All right. Thank you.
Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Marcus, thank you for being here. So on cybersecurity, on foreign interference, on privacy, on extremism, on fake news, is it fair to say you're still working on solving those problems as a company?
Yes, Senator, we have a number of issues that we're
okay.
hard at work solving.
So you're working on solving those problems. They are not fixed yet, correct?
Some of them are, and a lot deserve a lot
ones are
more
fixed?
work. No, I'd say that some of the issues that we've had in the past.
Right. Cybersecurity, foreign interference, privacy, extremism, fake news. Which ones of those have you fixed?
Well, you know, for instance, Senator, the issue that happened back in the day with
Right,
Cambridge
not
Analytica
which
cannot
ones hold
happen
on.
again.
Not which ones of you have you made significant progress. Have you fixed any of those?
Well, I'd say that all of them will always require a great deal of work.
So let's just pretend it's the two of us having a conversation. My question is this. What do you say to someone who says, maybe before you do a new thing, and an enormously important thing, you should go ahead and make sure you've got your own shop fixed? So what do you say to that?
Senator, I believe that the status quo is really a huge burden on so many people around the world when it comes to financial.
Hold on. You're making an argument for cryptocurrency generally. You're making an argument for this proposition generally. The question I have is, Facebook has a lot of problems. You guys have had a rough couple of years. And so the question is, why are you moving on to a new and challenging thing, other than the grandiosity of Silicon Valley, which causes you to get bored with your own thing and try to move into a new line of business? So the question is not, would it be great to eliminate credit card fees? The question is not, should the United States lead in this area? The question is, why Facebook? And why before you fixed your other stuff?
Senator, I believe it's important that we continue to innovate on behalf of the people we serve. And the same way that we've been able to bring communication prices down with our messaging app, because now anyone with a $40 smartphone can actually communicate for free with the world, we want to continue innovating on behalf of the very people we serve. And we hope that we can do the same thing for them when it comes to access to modern financial services.
Do you have specialized expertise with anti-money laundering, sanctions, prudential regulations, protecting financial information, preventing discrimination and other violations of consumer financial laws?
Senator, I do, and my team
No, I'm
does
sorry.
as well.
Not you personally. Does Facebook have that?
Senator, through the team that I've assembled, yes, now it does.
Within Facebook?
Senator,
Or are you talking
within
about the consortium?
Senator, within Calibra, which is the subsidiary that it created, it has the proper know-how to
So you hired
operate
up for
in.
this?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. Does your consortium have bylaws?
Senator, the charter of the association is in the process of being ratified by its members, and it will be made public.
So that's a no?
Senator, when we launched the website and a white paper in June 18, we have guidelines, but the reason that we didn't want all the other members to sign an existing bylaw or charter is we wanted them to take part in writing it, because again, we don't want to control the network, and we think it's important that those decisions are made collegially with the other co-founding members.
So what I'm hearing, and they're terrified to talk about this publicly, is that members of the consortium actually have lots of questions too, similar to the questions that are being offered on this dais, and they have great reservations about moving forward, but they don't want to be left out because of Facebook's market power. And so how do you address the bigger question, not just the one that I asked earlier about you not having fixed your own shop before you move into currency, which seems just on the face of it to be nuts. How do you answer the question about size and power and the idea that lots of people out there think Facebook is already too big and too powerful, and now you're going to get into currency? So how do you address that question?
Senator, we answer that question with the very setup that we have at the Libra Association and the way that this network is not only governed, but the way that we will have to face tremendous competition on top of this network with other companies that already have a lot of existing financial accounts that are already KYC, that are already operating, that have trust. So you have companies like PayPal and others that will, of course, collaborate but compete with us.
I guess you haven't just, and I appreciate this, but you really haven't answered the most basic question of all, which is why in the world should Facebook, of all companies, given the last couple of years, do this?
Senator, because we have the ability and the means to innovate on behalf of the people we serve, and we shouldn't stand back and wait to do it. If we can help the very people that we want to serve, because we have the resources and the engineering talent, I believe we should.
Because of your size?
Senator, because of our resources and our engineering talent.
Because you're so big that you should get bigger.
That's not the point I was making, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Menendez. Excuse me, you're right. Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Mr. Marcus, I want to talk quickly back to some of the money laundering issues that I've got real concerns about. And I understand that Calibra is committed to verify users and those kind of things, but for money laundering purposes, if you've got a worldwide issue and you've got partners all over the world, how are you going to get your partners to verify these third-party products, and how are we going to prevent this money laundering? I think I think that's a major concern. How are you going to deal with your partners?
Senator, first I want to commit that we will not launch until we've satisfied those concerns with Treasury and other regulators around the world in how the network is configured and it operates. But more practically, the way that the network is going to operate is that all the on and off ramps will be regulated and will have proper KYC and AML. As a result, activities such as money laundering, terrorism funding will have an opportunity to be monitored. And the intention here is really not for the efficacy of these programs to take a step back, quite the opposite. We believe that we can help improve the efficacy of these programs, and we'll work hard to make that happen, because this is something that I care deeply about.
Well, I appreciate that. I do have some concerns about that, because as Senator Brown said in his earlier, we've seen Facebook run into problems in their platform time and time again on any number of issues. And I think Senator Brown's comment was it's just another learning experience. But at some point, if things continue, and especially with a currency like this, if all of a sudden this operates and you continue to see all manner of criminal activity and money laundering, at some point an innovative prosecutor is going to look across the table and say, you, sir, are contributing to this. You are an aider and abettor. Are you prepared for that down the road if you don't do your job and this currency is used as to facilitate human trafficking, drugs, fraud, things like that? Are you prepared for Facebook and all of your Calibra and Libra users to be looked at as criminal defendants?
Senator, we're prepared to take the amount of time that will be required to ensure that those things don't happen and that we improve on the efficacy of these programs.
All right.
We really don't want this creation to be a tool for these types of activities. And this is why this time, before launching, we're taking so much time and sharing our plans early on, and have started this long consultative phase.
And I didn't mean to imply by my question that you're intending to do that. I know that, but I also know there's unintended consequences. And things don't go right, at some point, somebody's going to have to step up. So, but thank you for that. The other thing I want to talk about briefly is taxes and how some of this will be taxed. As you know, the current IRS law treats digital currency as property, which means under current law, every single transaction or purchase made with Libra will be a taxable event. The transaction will be taxable. So many businesses in the current crypto space now help their customers comply with tax laws by submitting detailed list of transactions to both the IRS and the consumer, similar to how stockbrokers might send both a customer and the IRS a 1099-B. So does Facebook plan on recording and reporting all Libra transactions directly to the IRS and to consumers to ensure that they fulfill their tax requirements?
Senator, this is an important issue. And the way that we're approaching this is twofold. One is Libra, unlike other digital currencies out there, will not be volatile to the dollar. So as a result, the variations in prices between the dollar and Libra will be very, very minimal. But as far as the Calibra wallet is concerned, we will, of course, provide all tools to consumers so that they can report their taxes without the hassle of having to record all transactions on their own.
Well, but so do I understand you're saying that you'll provide that to the customer, but that you would not propose providing that to the Internal Revenue Service? Is that how I understand that you're just putting the burden on the consumer and the customer to comply with Internal Revenue Service regulations?
Senator, my understanding of this matter is that this is the decision that is in the hands of the IRS, and that today the IRS, is my understanding, that they require consumers to report. But we would be happy to work with the IRS to make it easier for consumers or to reach a de minimis determination for Libra and other digital currencies in order to avoid the burden for consumers.
All right. Well, I think that from the money laundering aspect, criminal activity, and the Internal Revenue Service are two big things that you got to hurdles to overcome. It's going to take some time to, I think, get past all of that. So, but thank you for your testimony and for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, now Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg once said that his motto was move fast and break things. Several of my colleagues have referred to it. I only have 5 minutes, which is not nearly enough time to list all the things that Facebook has broken. I've highlighted some of the poster behind me, and the underlying theme here, this is a company that does not think through the consequences of its actions. And with nearly 2.4 billion active users, when Facebook breaks something, it has serious consequences. So I've been listening in and out between the meetings I've had in my office, some of your testimony, Mr. Marcus, and basically the theme of your response to many of my colleagues, particularly on data privacy, is trust us. Well, trust is something you earn, and Facebook certainly hasn't earned it. So it's not enough to say that you will keep the Calibra data separate. I'd like to know how exactly will you keep Libra data separate from your social media data?
Senator, thank you for your question. I want to also say that in the case of Libra, we're most definitely not moving fast. And I want to reiterate my commitments that we will not move to launch or to offer Libra as a currency or on Facebook's platform
We'll see
before.
if that happens. Just answer my question right now. How specifically are you going to keep the data separate?
So the way that we keep the Calibra data separate from the rest of Facebook is that actually within our infrastructure, we have separated the data from the rest of Facebook's infrastructure and data in order for it not to get commingled with the rest of the data.
Even though in your user agreement you say that you're going to may very well share aggregate data with Facebook.
Aggregate data that we may use on the Calibra wallet side, non-identifiable data to understand.
But that's the beginning of opening up the door. Let me ask you this. If there is a commingling of data, purposeful or not, can you commit to this committee and the public that you will notify users and the proper authorities within 48 hours?
Senator, I commit that we will naturally notify users that would have been affected by this, but first and foremost, we want to make sure that it never happens.
I know, but if it happens, I'm saying whether purposeful or not, things seem to happen at Facebook. Will you commit to notify both the users and the public within 48 hours of your finding of it?
Senator, I commit that we will inform users and the public if such thing happen within a reasonable time frame.
So that could mean a whole bunch of things. Let me ask you this. I have been the author and architect of many of the sanctions regimes we have leveled against rogue regimes, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, to mention some. Many of us are concerned about how those countries and how criminals can use Libra to evade U.S. sanctions or money laundering laws. Last year, the Treasury Department for the first time identified and published digital currency addresses associated with 2 Iranian-based individuals who helped exchange Bitcoin for Iranian cybercriminals that used ransomware to extort millions of U.S. dollars from over 200 victims. If Libra was used for a similar transaction, would the Libra Association, the group that validates Libra transactions, freeze the assets of such sanctioned individuals?
Senator, first, I really want to stress the fact that if we don't lead, others will. And as a result, the transactions that you highlighted and listed will happen on a network where we will have no jurisdiction and no reach and no ability to exert any control for national security purposes. As far as Libra is concerned, naturally, because Libra, despite the fact that it will be headquartered, will be registered with FinCEN, will collaborate, will have an AML program, and will ensure that on and off ramps are properly regulated. And as a result, those types of activities should be extremely hard.
But my core question is, having that individual identified to you, the type I just described, would you freeze the assets of such a sanctioned individual under your system?
Senator, the way that this would happen and the way that the system is currently contemplated, it would be the role of the big custodial wallets operating on top of the Libra network, like the Calibra wallet and many others, to block access for funds for those addresses, as well as all of the on and off ramps that would prevent those addresses to convert to cash.
Let me ask you one other question. I have a whole bunch of them, but I'll submit them for the record. This doesn't assuage my concerns as it relates to the very sanctions that we have worked on a bipartisan basis to pass. So would the Libra Association, what would they do if U.S. regulators wanted to enforce sanctions on certain individuals but other global regulators did not? How would the association determine which set of rules to comply with?
Senator, that's a really good question, and one that we're in active discussions with a number of regulators, including Treasury. And my understanding of this and the way that we're currently thinking about this is that actually the way to properly police and control the network is through one, the on and off ramps, and two, to all of the wallets that will be regulated.
I'm going to take you at your word that you're not going to act before you have all these questions resolved, because if not, what Libra could be is the Wild West of cryptocurrency, where money laundering criminals and countries seeking to avoid U.S. sanctions could be their resolve, and we just can't have that.
I agree, Senator.
Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Marcus. You know, one of the benefits of going last is you get to hear your colleagues' comments. So I'm going to make a couple comments I hadn't planned to make otherwise. Number one, Senator Kennedy rightfully pointed out Facebook's failings in the face of Russian interference in the 2016 elections. I know you're working hard to remedy it. I frankly wish the United States Congress was working to remedy it as well. We have a bill in this committee, bipartisan bill called the Deter Act, that would say to Putin or anybody else that wants to interfere in our 2020 elections that they will pay a certain and very high price. So I hope, Mr. Chairman, that we will move on that. We have to get to the bottom of 2016, but my goodness, we should be working on a bipartisan basis to protect our elections in 2020, and we have a means to do that. Secondly, I heard a hint of this whole idea that Facebook and other social media companies are conspiring against right-wing voices. In fact, 4 days ago, we had the President of the United States have what he called a social media summit at the White House, where he summoned some of the most right-wing, extreme social media voices and peddled this idea that the President's own Twitter account was somehow being blocked and limited. And yet, within the last 48 hours, we've seen what a grotesque lie that was. This is a president who just spewed forth all sorts of racist comments over the last 48 hours. And it does highlight the challenge social media companies have in trying to make sure that they monitor community standards to prevent incendiary comments that can cause harm or danger, and at the same time allow freedom of voices on the internet. So I hope we'll get away from this nonsense that we often hear from the President and others about this kind of biased censorship. And I hope we'll have more voices actually exercising their First Amendment rights to speak out against the President's racist comments. Third, real-time payments. I'm looking forward and enjoyed this discussion here. Every time the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Chairman Powell, has come before this committee and others, I've asked them why it is the United States government is so far behind our European partners and many others in real-time payments. The fact that we don't have a system in this country that can clear real-time payments is today costing millions of Americans billions of dollars, and they should accelerate their efforts and get it done. And I personally do not think we should hand that over to a consortium of the biggest banks in the country. So let's talk about the conversation here today specifically. I understand your point, saying that whether you trust Facebook or don't trust Facebook, that's not a big issue with respect to the Libra Association. I have questions and concerns, and you've heard some today, about the Libra Association itself. Because what's different from things like Bitcoin, you know, the uncertainty around Bitcoin, the uncertainty of its value, the wild fluctuations, in my view, mean it's not going to be put into widespread use. Whereas the whole goal here is to have billions of people around the world using this new coin, right? I mean, that is the goal, is it not?
It's really to help the very people who don't have access to current financial services.
But the idea is billions of people, and because this is now going to be tied to other currencies and supposedly be more stable, it will be in very widespread use. So there are huge concerns because this, in my view, obviously has lots of questions that need to be vetted. And the organization itself, the Libra Association, you can say you don't have to trust Facebook, but you do have to trust the Libra Association. And they're doing something very different. They're creating a new currency that is intended to be used by billions of people. And I think there are lots of questions that you still need to answer regarding that structure. I mean, I think people will conjure up the James Bond movie and that organization Spectre. And unless you're really clear about how this is going to be a transparent association and be accountable in all the ways that have been discussed today, then it's not a question of whether people trust Facebook or not. It's a question of whether people trust this international, this organization, run by private companies. And my view is when you're talking about a world currency that's going to be potentially used by billions of people, I'm not sure that there's sufficient accountability that you could build into that system that would answer all the concerns. But I look forward to the continuing conversation.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Kennedy's asked for a second round, and then Senator Brown and I will both go with another round of questioning, and I think that will be it. We may have another senator or two show up. So with that, Senator Kennedy.
Mr. Marcus, I want to follow up on Senator Cotton's concerns. And I think the basis for his concern is we can agree on this, I think, that Facebook is not really a company anymore. It's a country. I mean, you get 2.2 billion people that use it. I don't see anything in the documents that I've seen that would prevent the members of Calibra, once Libra is prevalent throughout the world, saying, you know, we don't believe in abortion rights. And we have the transaction data of all these people. So we're just going to say if you believe in abortion rights, you can't use Libra, or vice versa. And you could make that assessment on the basis of any person's position on socioeconomic issues. I think you need to address that. Let me ask you a question about, again, there's a big issue in trust here. In May of a couple of years ago, I think it was 2016, there was an article appeared that quoted news curators at Facebook. They were in charge of the trending news section. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, Senator.
Right. I don't think you have it anymore. But they testified that they had been instructed by the management of Facebook to suppress news stories of interest to conservative readers, even if they met the qualifications of trending. And they stated that they were told to suppress news stories about CPAC, Mitt Romney, Rand Paul, Lois Lerner, Scott Walker, Chris Kyle, Ted Cruz, articles from Newsmax, articles from the Washington Examiner. And one of the curators even kept a log. Is that true?
Senator, I wasn't part of that team, and I'm not aware of how it functioned, but that product doesn't exist anymore.
Okay. Well, the news curators also told that they were instructed to include in the trending news section articles from certain publications, whether they were true or not. And two of those publications were CNN and New York Times. Is that true?
Senator, again, I wasn't involved, and this was not my product team, and it might have happened even prior to my time. I do want to say, though, that Facebook really is a technology platform that is neutral when it comes to...
I'm familiar with Facebook. Let me just ask one other question. The news curators said they were told by management not to ever put in an article in the trending news section about Facebook. Is that true?
Again, Senator, this was not my team, and I'm not aware.
Okay. Is there any data that Facebook has on its customers, if you will, that on principle Facebook wouldn't monetize?
Well, Senator, the way that the data is used on Facebook when it comes to monetization is enabling better ads, to serve better ads to people that are personalized.
I get that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I get that. But is there any data that on principle Facebook would say, we're not going to make money on this. This crosses the line. Have you ever thought about that?
Well, Senator, it's not about making money, but as far as Calibra is concerned, the commitment...
It's not about making money?
Senator, we don't typically look at data in a way that is to make money, is just to improve the service, including improving the quality of the ads that we serve.
Let me stop you now, Mr. Marcus. You're telling me that money is a secondary concern at Facebook? Don't you have shareholders?
Senator, we do, but I believe that it is important that we first and foremost serve our customers, and the way we've done it with messaging apps, notably, without monetizing them yet, is a testament to what we can do to lower costs for people when we have the opportunity.
All right, last question. I got 19 seconds here. I got to ask this, if this is true. Do you know these people? Sheryl Sandberg, Elliot Schrage, or Monica Bickert?
I do, Senator.
Okay. Is it true that Mr. Zuckerberg told them to meet several times and consider shutting down then-candidate Trump's Facebook website in 2016 because Mr. Zuckerberg disagreed with his views on immigration. Is that true?
Senator, I'm not aware.
You just don't know?
I do not know, Senator, but it would surprise me, but I'm not aware.
Okay. Last question, I promise. I've seen this description before, and I want your thoughts on it. If you and I interface on Facebook, they're really not just two participants. It's you, it's me, and it's Facebook. Is that an accurate description? That nothing's private?
Except on messaging platforms, notably on WhatsApp, that is fully end-to-end encrypted. In this case, it would be just the two of us, Senator.
Okay. And this really is my last one. If Libra catches on, and let's say 200 million people are using it, somebody is going to have the data on all of the financial transactions that those 200 million people have consummated, which is going to indicate what they're buying, what they're not buying, what their likes are, where they like to shop, just a treasure trove of information. You're telling me that nobody in Calibra is going to attempt to monetize that?
Senator, when it comes to the Libra Association, they will not have any personal identifiable data, and as a result, they will have no way to
Somebody will have the data. Who will have the data?
The wallets that will provide the services will have the data for their own wallets, and I can speak to
So you're telling me nobody's going to monetize that data?
As far as the Calibra wallets, we don't intend
But
to...
isn't it the case that at some point, those consumers are going to be sent an email saying, do you care if we share your data, and the details are right here, click on this, and it's going to refer you to a 10-page, single-spaced disclaimer written by the lawyers in which you could hire a dead body and nobody would ever find it. And they're going to start doing it. Isn't that what's going to happen?
No, Senator.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Marcus, thank you for sitting here through this. I normally don't respond to uber partisan comments from colleagues, but I just wanted to just ask the Republican committee staff to let Senator Cotton know that every letter to Facebook from this committee, from any of us on this committee, has come, or at least from the committee, have been jointly signed by Senator Crapo and me, and I think that's important to know. As you see, Mr. Marcus, is clear from this hearing that distrust of Facebook is a pretty universal feeling here. You heard Senator Kennedy say it, you heard Senator McSally, you heard on the Democratic side, Senator Smith and Van Hollen and Schatz and me and others. So that is an issue you need to deal with. And I want to just read back what you said to me about trust. You said, Senator, you heard it directly from Mark, and I will reiterate this, that trust is primordial. And I responded, I didn't hear it from Mark, and you said trust is primordial. We've made the mistakes in the past, we've been working, and then on. So I know what the word trust means, I know what the word primordial means. What the hell does that mean, that trust is primordial? That both senators, apparently you said, and apparently Mark Zuckerberg said, although we found no record that he said it, but I believe you if you said he said it. But what does it mean?
Senator, it means that we need to continually, continue to do better in serving the customers and the users we're serving, and we will do what it takes to earn their trust, and that's definitely the case for as well for Libra and the Calibra wallet.
And this is the same Mark Zuckerberg that once called people who trust him with their data dumb, and the next word starting with an F I can't say in this committee. This is the same Mark Zuckerberg who said that I could even read what he says. 4,000 emails, I have over 4,000 emails, pictures, addresses. People just submitted it. I don't know why they trust me. And then he said dumb in a profanity. So why, I guess, and then I hear you quoting him and then you saying it yourself that trust is primordial. And the definition of primordial is from the beginning of time. And your biggest problem is that people don't trust you. So what am I to take from this?
That we need to continue working very hard to ensure that we are deserving of trust.
But why would you lead with trust is primordial? It's so much in your DNA that you can always trust us, but then just lay out one after another times that that you deceived, undermined, betrayed that trust? Why, again, Senator Schatz said over and over, why, with all of your problems, should we trust you on something as important as a worldwide currency and the damage that can come from it?
Senator, this is why we've set up Libra the way we have, which is that we will not control it, and we will be one among 100 different participants that will govern over the network and the currency. And as a result, we will have to earn people's trust if we want them to use our products and services on top of the Libra network, because they'll have plenty of choice with established companies that have a lot of trust.
You trust us to believe that statement when you say one of 100, but you're the only one that has access to 2 billion people. And the George Orwell people, some people are created more equal than others. Why should we trust you when you keep talking about all the competition? There are 100 players, but nobody is like you as the preeminent player.
Senator, I do want to address this because I believe that there might be some misunderstanding on how the people on the Facebook wallet, the Calibra wallet, will have to onboard. We will not have the ability to onboard all people using our products automatically, naturally. We will not even use Facebook login. People will have to onboard, create a new account with Calibra, upload their government-issued ID, and as a result, there's going to be a lot of friction, and we will have to make very strong commitments so that people trust us, and we will have to honor those commitments for a very long period of time to earn people's trust, because while we do that, you will have other wallets that already have a number of customers that they can enable Libra for immediately, and we're not in that position. And as a result, we put ourselves in a position where we will have to work very hard to earn people's trust to use our products and services.
Pretty hard to trust when there is so little contrition responding to Senator Kennedy about the 2016 election, or what you've done to the media in this country, to journalism, and what you've done, according to the United Nations, in Myanmar. Pretty hard for us to trust you with a worldwide currency that you're setting up in Switzerland.
Senator, I believe that the status quo is not working for so many people that it's time for new progress to happen in financial services, for those barriers for so many people that are left behind to be lower, and for costs for so many people to be also lower. And that's why we are deciding to take the lead on this and then relinquish this lead.
Mr. Chairman, I wish we could trust Facebook. It's pretty clear there's almost nobody in this committee that does. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brown. I'll ask my final round of questions right now. Mr. Marcus, I've stated in a number of our previous hearings that ensuring that individuals have real control over their data is critical. And the United States does not have, in my opinion, adequate assurances in its law. I talked about that with you in my first round of questions. I'm personally convinced that we need to, if we don't, well, we have a sectoral approach, as I indicated, and I think we need to have a more comprehensive, broad-based approach, at least for the basic rights. Europe in the GDPR does have such a law, the GDPR. That guarantees individuals with the right to information about the access to their personal data, which I believe means they should have access. They should be notified when their data is being collected, what data is being collected, and given rights right at that point to opt out or in, and there should be corresponding responsibilities. Does Libra and its associated third-party developers like Calibra, do they anticipate being captured under GDPR at this point in time?
Chairman, it will really depend on the jurisdiction of different wallets, but as far as the Calibra wallet is concerned, we will definitely have the highest standards when it comes to privacy, and as soon as the privacy policies and commitments are written, you have my commitment that we will share those with you.
All right, thank you. And let me get into that a little bit in the last part of my questions here. as I understand it, using the blockchain technology results in a limited amount of personal privacy or personal private data actually being collected. You've indicated that a person would have to provide their government-issued ID, and then I assume, and you just please correct me or help me understand this, from that point, Calibra would have their ID, that would know the basic set of facts that's on their government ID, and I assume that ID is, or that information is connected to some kind of a code data or something that's used in the blockchain. Is that correct?
No, Senator. Actually, the blockchain will not include personally identifiable data.
But would Calibra have the ability to connect a blockchain to the user of that blockchain?
Senator, it will depend on whether the transaction has been initiated from a Calibra customer or not.
Okay, and if it was initiated by a Calibra customer, would Calibra would then know the identity of the person using or engaging in that transaction, in that blockchain?
Yes, Senator, because they would be using our product.
And what else would Calibra know in terms of, what other data would Calibra be able to use if it wanted to?
Senator, the mindset in which we're establishing the product and the privacy of the product is that it will only collect the information that is required to offer the service, but also to keep accounts safe, which is, of course, really important when it comes to money, and especially because we will have strong customer protection programs. So we will need to protect accounts, and data, relevant data, is actually quite helpful in protecting consumers' accounts.
So tell me what some of that relevant data is. Does that mean that let's say it was a retail purchase, does that mean that the item purchased is a part of that data?
Senator, that would really depend, and I don't believe that we need that information, for instance, either for the purposes of securing accounts or other purposes.
So I've been told that the blockchain technology actually allows an enhancement of privacy protection. Do you believe that's the case, that the use of blockchain technology actually reduces the potential for the abuse of collecting data on individuals?
Senator, yes. Typically, it enables people to use software that they can run on their own, and as a result, they can be their own sovereign, if you will, of the data that is used. And then it's a question of choice for consumers. On one side, they can have consumer protections, and on the other, they can be self-sovereign. But there are opportunities with blockchain technology to enable people to own their own data.
So in comparison, leaving the Libra proposal out of the question now and just looking at the technology issue of blockchain technology versus, say, the current transactional technology that we use for credit card transactions or bank account transactions, check transactions, and what have you. If we were to see a move globally into use of blockchain technology for currency transactions, would that represent an opportunity to enhance personal privacy?
Senator, it can be if implemented the right way, yes.
All right. I'm going to want to learn a lot more about that. Maybe you could give me some of your information on that.
Thanks.
All right. Before we gavel close, I want to reiterate my belief that it's critically important that policymakers and regulators understand the rules of the road as this project continues to develop. To the extent that gaps within the existing U.S. authority become apparent, it's worth examining whether new or clarifying legislation is warranted to ensure that U.S. regulators are not unfairly being relegated to the sidelines in assessment and oversight of this project and others like it. That concludes the questioning for today's hearing. For senators who wish to submit questions for the record, those questions are due to the committee by Tuesday, July 23rd. Mr. Marcus, we ask that you respond to those questions as promptly as you can. And again, thank you for being here.
Thank you,
This
Chairman.
hearing is adjourned.
Thank you, Chairman.